Hey y'all, and welcome to Politibrawl. My name is Brian, and CNBC Squawk Box host sounds off on this guest who's doing his best to defend the insanity that is the Harris tax plan. This is absolutely insane. But before we dive in, I want to give a quick shout out over to our sponsors over at Native Path, where their collagen peptides can help you live a healthier life. But more on that later. Now, let's get back into the video.
Taxing unrealized gains just doesn't seem fair in any sense of the word.
But in the very best
sense, if you are taxing unrealized gains, all you're doing is pulling forward the taxes that would be paid later when someone actually sells the stock.
I think that this reaction to unrealized gains is a little funny, given that I bet that the majority of people watching right now are already paying a tax on unrealized gains. It's called a property tax. When the value of your home goes up,
it's a use tax.
When the value of your home goes up, you pay higher taxes even if you don't sell your home.
Your value of your home never moves the way a stock moves, the way something else moves.
That's always the go-to answer.
It's also, property tax is a use tax. You're paying for the schools, you're paying for emergency services. Those are things that make absolute sense.
And sure, and all the revenue that comes in from these unrealized gains taxes and the other taxes in the Harris plan are going to go to creating what she calls more opportunity. It's to make sure that every newborn born in this country gets $6,000.
Using the services.
Well, look, you're arguing that this is some sort of foreign concept that's completely unknown in the U.S. tax code.
It's probably unconstitutional. It's probably, and it was never in anyone's intent to tax.
It's not an income tax,
and it's never going to happen.
Fundamentally, what we have right now is a revenue problem. If we went back to the tax code we had in 2000, the national debt would actually be going down. And those tax cuts have largely gone to the very, very rich. So all these policies would do.
First of all, those tax cuts are expiring next year anyway. So it's going to be something
and
that
it's
has
a
to be dealt
spending
with.
problem, Parad. It's 23% of GDP is being spent. It's usually about 19 or 20%. And it's the long-term average is not 20% of revenues. It's about 18%. And we're at about 17%.
Well, Joe, I just got to disagree on. I got to point something out.
You can't disagree on actual numbers.
No, I got to say that, spending is going up.
What's the long-term spending average? And Harris wants to spend more than what we're spending right now. So what's the long-term percentage of spending to GDP? What do you say it is?
Our spending is going. Everyone knew this back in 2000, that spending would go up on programs like Social Security and Medicare because the baby boomer generation would be retiring. If we had the tax code that we had in 2000, if you look at what's called non-defense discretionary spending, which is spending other than Social Security, Medicare, and other than defense, that is actually historically low right now. So
but overall,
the source 23%.
Of our problem.
No, because of Social Security and Medicare and so on. And those are anticipated increases because people are retiring. Look, we're about $35 trillion in debt right now. $8 trillion of that, about a quarter of it, came under the Trump presidency. And there was an article, actually, I saw on your own website, CNBC, last night, saying that the Trump plan would significantly increase the deficit.
There's a big difference. There's a big difference with CNBC.com.
Oh boy, there's a lot to unpack here. So let's actually... I like working backwards, but no, we're going to start off with number one. Unrealized gains. Kamala Harris wants to tax us on unrealized gains. So let's say you have a $30 stock that got bumped up within the past year to $40, but you haven't sold it. If you sell it before a certain time, you won't have to pay the unrealized gains, or at least I assume that's what would happen. If not, and you're paying the unrealized gains no matter which way you slice it tax, it's, what is the right word to describe this? Asinine. It's absolutely asinine. So what normally happens is if you have a stock and it appreciates in value and then you sell it, you have it for $30, you sell it for $40, you made a $10 profit. That is, at least you're hoping you made a $10 profit, even though inflation probably went up 2%, so you're really making $9 and something cents. But an unrealized gains, plus the, there's a tax rate for the amount of money you make on stocks. So you're actually losing money from that tax already, and then you add on the unrealized gains. Let's say that extra $10 was an unrealized gain and you never sold the stock to begin with. So you are now paying a tax on the money that you made, even though you haven't sold the stock yet. Hey y'all, I wanted to give a quick shout out to our new sponsors, Native Path. Created by Dr. Chad out of Austin, Texas, he realized that there was something deeply wrong in this medical community. And instead of focusing on nutrition, they were just focused on serving big pharma. So he left and created this new company called Native Path. And what do they do over there? They sell something called collagen. Now, what is collagen? Well, it's not magic fairy dust. It's not this muscle milk. It's not calcium rich. Instead, it is an odorless, flavorless, dissolves completely in water powder that you can mix. And unlike iocane powder, this stuff has massive health benefits. It can help your bones, your joints, your ligaments, your skin, your hair follicles, even your fingernails. This stuff is absolutely packed with the nutrients that we lose so constantly in our modern diet. This stuff is a fantastic supplement, can help you live a healthier life. And if you go to this link down here below, you will find up to 45% off of certain products. That is how much Native Path cares about your health. So go check them out, link in the description below. And now, back to regularly scheduled programming. This is basically an attempt to take even more money from your pile and put it into the federal government's coffers. See, the Democrats have realized the hard way that raising taxes does not work in the modern era of politics. It might have worked in Lincoln's time when he raised taxes briefly on people without congressional approval. It might have worked briefly to pay off the World War I debt. What really helped out a World War II debt was the selling of bonds. After all, there was the old phrase, we'll win the war with 5 for 4. You pay for 4 war bonds, you get 5. Great little deal. Great little jingle, too. But the idea of raising taxes in the modern era, when we're already making less and less money, because we keep on just printing it more and more and more, the Democrats know it doesn't work. And the Republicans are smart enough to know that cutting those taxes frees up extra money into the economy. It flows more because there's more investment, and where there's more investment, there's more tax base. When there's more tax base, there's more tax revenue. So you cut off taxes briefly, but you actually increase the amount that comes in. This happened during the later Reagan years. This happened during George W. Bush. As a matter of fact, the downfall, the real reason Bush's father, Bush the Elder, failed to win the White House for a second term is he made a deal with the Democrats to raise taxes. That was the last time that happened, and it's been such an ingrained part of the political ideology now that the Republican Party can't do that because they know the result. They've seen past evidence, and they're smart enough to understand not to do that ever again. And so the Democrats are looking for any new way to basically squeeze you dry. And so with the unrealized gains tax, they're able to go after home values, they're able to go after stocks, they're able to go after bonds. So they're ultimately trying to take more wealth away from the stock market, which is an even worse idea than raising taxes to begin with. Furthermore, the excuses that this dude gives, I'm not even going to try and pronounce his name. My ability to pronounce Indian names is terrible. At least I assume he's Indian. That's a safe assumption here. But this dude, who's carrying water for the Biden administration, says, well, isn't there already an unrealized unrealized gains tax? Like, for instance, property values. Oh, no. No, property values are local, not federal. That is not the same playing field. That's comparing apples and oranges here, buddy. And I'm glad that these hosts just laughed him out of the room after that. But ultimately, that final little dig at the very end really got under my skin. We are $35 trillion in debt, and $8 trillion of that happened under 4 years under Trump. When did we start getting over the trillion mark in debt? About 2001. That's about when it started. So in the past 23 years since then, you know what? Let's make it easier for math. The past 24 years. Let's see. That's over $1 trillion every single year. So yes, things jumped up under the Trump administration. Why is that? Well, there was this little thing called a shutdown because of a very curable or very survivable virus threatened to overwhelm our hospital system. So the recommendation was shut down for a little while, And then once we have the supplies necessary, we'll be able to actually handle the problem from there. And that mostly happened if you were in a red state, if you were in a state like Florida or Georgia, which unlocked after the 6 weeks recommended. And it worked to the exact same extent as it did when Democrat states were locked down for 12, 16, 24 weeks. Because of that, we had to prime the economy to keep everything from collapsing. A lot of that money has come back into the coffers, just into the same way the bailouts actually did work in 2008. We don't like to admit this, but the General Motors bailouts, that worked. A lot of the Wall Street bailouts, that worked. It kept the economy going, and we've made the money back. But because of other spending problems, and see, this is what this dude is so close to understand. The issue with our spending started in 2001. There were two big things going on that year. One, we were unprecedentedly attacked in the most egregious fashion without warning, starting off a series of wars. Then the boomers started to retire, and the greatest generation had fully retired. We were now spending more money on Social Security and Medicare. And what this man conveniently forgets is that in the late 90s, the Republicans said, we need to look at Social Security and Medicare. We might need to reform the programs. And everybody flipped out and he started voting for Democrats again. Okay, so the Republicans barely win the presidential election, but they don't have full control. They let it slip again in the mid to late 2000s that maybe we need to take a look at Social Security and Medicare, and that's when the first part of the deluge began. I believe they mentioned it again in 2006, and that's when the Democrats started really taking over. And that's how we got Barack Obama in 2005. So yeah, the number one and now number 3 expenditure. Do you know the number 2 expenditure, which this guy conveniently leaves out? Interest payments. That's right. Social Security, Social Security, interest payments, and now Medicare take up over 70% of federal expenditures. Because we're no longer in active combat roles across the world, our military budget has dropped significantly. But instead of saving money from that point, we have seen the ballooning of our interest payments, and that's not going to stop anytime soon. And so what the Harris campaign, what Kamala wants to do is raise taxes on checks, notes, essentially middle-class America. The same party that cries about billionaires all the time wants to hurt your potential savings and your potential property values. All that will benefit is their corporatist cronies and their billionaire friends. All this benefits is people like Bill Gates and BlackRock. This is not a plan to save Americans. This is a plan to almost enslave us in a way, to take away a whole bunch of our money base. This almost reminds me of what happened to King John of England, who, because his brother ran his mouth too much in France, got captured, and so he had to raise taxes in order to get him back from France. Eventually it happens, but then Richard once again says, I want revenge, goes into France, leaves his nation destitute, and leaves his unpopular kid brother as regent, and dies in battle. What happens next is King John needs to raise more money because the crown is in debt. Finally, the noblemen got so ticked off with him because he was taking away their money, they kidnapped him and forced him to sign the Magna Carta. It's getting eerily similar to that exact same situation, where people are realizing that they're getting screwed. But what's going to happen in our case is it's going to be a voting landslide, either here in 2024 or in 2028. One of those 2 years is going to be the most crucial for the next, arguably, 2 generations. And I hope it's 2024 and not 2028, because I can't afford 4 more years of these asinine plans. Folks, my name is Brian. Hope you enjoyed that segment here on Politibrawl. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you on the next one. And until then, y'all have a good one.